So let me start the program. Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well. So I request first of all, please mute yourself and please open your camera so that we can have an interactive session. If you don't have any privacy issue, I request everyone to open your camera and mute yourself. Okay. So hello everyone. Today we are privileged to welcome our distinguished speaker, Ms. Beenish Shahbaz Awan ma'am, who will deliver a lecture on the topic human rights within the framework of international law and its implication. With an impressive academic background, Ms. Awan ma'am holds an MA in International Relations and has earned a prestigious honor of gold medal in her LLB honors. Additionally, she has been recognized with both campus and university gold medals during her LLB honors studies. Also, Ms. Awan completed her LLM in International Law from University of Essex, England, where she excelled with the support of a fully funded scholarship. It is indeed an honor to have such an accomplished individual with us today. I kindly request all of you to join me in extending a warm welcome to Ms. Shahbaz Awan, ma'am, and kindly over to you, ma'am, to have a session with all the participants today.
Thank you so much. Welcome
Thank you.
everybody. Well, thank you so much, Kashi, for such a nice introduction. And I think without wasting any time, we should go to the topic because this topic is quite broader. It is a very,
Yes.
very, very wide topic because whenever you talk about international law is has a very broader perspective. I mean, in every aspect of your life. I would request everybody to please mute so that I can continue without any distraction. And if you can just turn on your camera so that I can have an interaction with you face to face. So if anybody can. Perfect. All right, thank you. So basically, whenever we talk about international law, so we instantly keep on thinking about that human rights and international law. How come? Because when you talk about international law, you see that there are certain different, ideas of international law. For example, you talk about state responsibility, you talk about state recognition, you talk about the sources of international law, you talk about the law of war, you talk about law of international environmental law. You say that, yeah, we know about the law of the sea. You talk about lot of different things. You talk about the law of the treaties and all that stuff. These are basically the parts of international law. I have just pinpointed just, I think, 5% of international law. But when we say that human rights implications in the international law, that's a very different concept. That's something like very different. And people keep on thinking about, okay, why? I mean, how come that human rights are involved in the international law? And if the human rights are involved in the international law, what are the implications of it? How can we claim the human rights in the international law? Because, we say that, at our national levels, whether it's India, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Sudan, whether it's in any part of the world, we know about our human rights. Being a student of law, I hope that everybody is a student of the law is here, or if the people are not the student of the law, so they should know about their own rights. We say that this is my human right. I have a right to life. I have a right to vote. I have a right of assembly. I have a right of association, and so on and so forth. But in spite of all that, we say that international law, how come the human rights involved in it? Basically, human rights are involved in every aspect of the international law. And basically, it's very difficult for us to, cover each and everything of the human rights in international law right now. That's gonna be very difficult for us in just 1 hour and 30 minutes. That's gonna be very difficult to understand each and everything about the human rights implications in the international law. But I'll try my level best to make you a very better understanding, if not the better understanding, basically the know-how of the human rights which are inculcated in the international law and its implications. So just come to the topic again, because that was the basic overview that it has the very wide scope of the human rights in international law. When you say the international law, we all know that international law basically are the system of the laws that regulate the relationship between the one state to another state or among states. That's the very old definition of international law. After World War II, after the establishment of the United Nations Security Council, after the establishment of the United Nations Declaration on the Human Rights and all that stuff, the international law's definition has been changed. If anyone has any background of the international relations, they would definitely have an idea that now the world is quite different from the world which we had in the past. The world is constantly changing. States have their own interests. States' interests are changing with the passage of the time. Now, this is a very global diversity. We have the very global diversity. The world is quite global, and we are in a state that no country can stay away from the interaction from the other states. That's not going to be the possible in today's world. If any state says that, okay, I am the one and I'm just going to live alone, like the North Korea and South Korea, that's not going to be possible. Whatever you read in the newspaper, whatever you read in the journals and the articles, that's not exactly what's happening in this world. Now every state needs other state. Simple as that. Now the international laws definitions have been changed. Now international law says that this is a system of the laws that keep on having the check and balance, that keep on regulating the rules and the regulations of the international organizations, international institutions, and their relationship with the state to state relationship, state relationship with the international institution, states relationship with the international organization, states relationship with each other, and their relationship with the individuals as well. Now this basically has come because whenever you talk about, we all know that in international law, basically the main subject is a state. Even then, now it has been changed. Now another main subject is the individual, and when you talk about individual, human rights are involved in it. So basically international law definition with the passage of the time has also been changed, and we all know that international law basically provide the norms and the means to accentuate the transnational justice, transnational frictions, and all that stuff. I'm not going to go into the deep philosophical point of view the international law here. Let's just go to the main point of the human rights, how human rights basically came into the United Nations. You all would have known that in the very past, not just in the very past, but what I can say is that in the beginning of the 19th century, the concept of slavery came into being in Europe. What happened that in Europe in 1807, probably 1807 or 1808 at that time, slavery was the main issue. And when this issue, because that issue was basically seen as an abuse, not as a human right violation, just as an abuse. Okay, slavery is there, it means that this is an abuse. You can't do the brutalities to the people, you can't have the mass atrocities to the people, you can't make other people your slave, because in slavery, what actually the slavery is, you don't have the control on your own life. Simple as that. Your life is run by other people or by other states or by other institutions or whatever you can say. Slavery came into being at the start of the 19th century. Even it is basically before 19th century, but in the 19th century it got highlighted. In 1807, what happened that in Europe, the countries who were who had the slave trading, who had the partnership in the slave trading, who were basically slave trading nations, who were the slave owning nations. What did they do? They said that we are going to abandon this practice, and now our target right now is to make other states realize that whatever you are doing with the slaves right now, this is very bad. This should be stopped. Then in 1926, Slavery Convention came into being. Even at that time, the human rights were basically not inculcated in the as the, you can say, as a part of the international law. It was basically not like that. You all would have come to know about the 1919, after the World War One, the League of the Nation in the 1919 came into being. And the basic purpose of this so-called League of the Nation was that we have to have a very peaceful cooperation among states. We have to, like, well, you can say, have a very peaceful environment, and there shouldn't be any kind of the war in it, and there shouldn't be any kind of the atrocities in the world. All the states are just like, it was very so-called, and I will definitely come to the details that why I'm saying the League of the Nation, obviously it failed. But even then, I'm saying that it was so-called because many major and the big, you can say, the world powers, so-called world powers, who claim themselves to be the world powers, they never become a part of this kind of the organizations where human rights are protected, or you can say where the fundamental freedoms are protected. They say that we are the preachers of the human rights. We are like, oh my gosh, we are something very sacred states and nobody above us and whatever, whatever. But they never become of this kind of the organizations which basically has to support the human right. They have to respect and protect and promote the human rights. They never become a part of it. And you can see from the recent what's happening in the Palestine and Gaza, you can basically have an idea what I actually just um, want to say here. Anyhow, in 1919, it got failed. Nothing happened because in the 1919 League of the Nation, a series of the treaties came into being, and these series of treaties basically had the mission that we have to protect some minorities, and those minorities were of Balkan area and of some of the Eastern Europe area. That's it. These minorities have nothing to do with the, you can say, the other. Hang on, I'm just gonna, yeah. These basically minorities, these were not like the whole minorities. Whatever happening in all part of the world, we have to be responsible to that, because every, you can say, the organization or every, but the biggest state keeps on saying that okay, it's our responsibility to protect and promote the human rights. We will see that what's happening in the colonial area, we will see that what's happening in all part of the world. But nothing happened. Nothing happened at that time. Then came United Nations after the Second World War. United Nations basically has, well, if I just go into the deep analysis of it, so I would have like United Nations is like just not that much, you can say, influential, but still very influential in so many ways and in so many different, you can say, by preaching different kind of the ideas, different concepts for the promotion and protection of human rights and all that stuff. So it was basically that in United Nations, basically article 1, article 1 of the United Nations itself included the word human rights in it. Before that, there was no concept of the human rights. There was the concept of the human rights, but not just like in written. You can't say that in any treaty which we had before the United Nation organization, Charter of the United Nation, we never find any kind of the single word of the human right in any kind of the treaty. There were states who were saying, oh, there shouldn't be any kind of the slavery, there shouldn't be any kind of the discrimination, feminist movements were there, blah blah, so on and so forth. But human rights were not included in it. Even in the article 1 of the United Nations, it was said that we have to protect and promote the human right, we have to respect the human right, there is a fundamental freedom, and there shouldn't be any kind of the discrimination on the basis of the race, religion, sex, language, blah blah, whatever it was there. Article 1 states that. Then Article 55 tried its level best to describe the human rights. Article 55 of the United Nations itself again stated that you have to protect the human rights. Human rights should be protected, human rights should be respected in all part of the world, it was stated. And how we have to do, Article 56 of the United Nations then stated. Article 56 that all and respect and promote the human rights and the fundamental freedom and the protection without discrimination of the sex, religion, language, and whatever any kind of the discriminations which we keep on facing in any part of the world. So basically, and then there comes Article 57 of the United Nations. That's not controversial, but it has become controversial to some extent because Article 56 states that all the United Nations member states basically are supposed to protect the human rights individually or collectively. There are two words which are in Article 56, individually or collectively. Then came Article 57. That's very controversial. That has been very controversial in all part of the world. For example, United States invaded Afghanistan just because of this Article 57. Russia invaded Ukraine right now just because that it had a view of Article 57 in its mind. So basically what states do, that states always keep their national interest at the top priority. If anyone who is a student of international law, if anyone who has a little bit background of the international law, there is a saying in international law, and that is there are no permanent friends and there are no permanent enemies in international relations. For example, if I state, Pakistan sometimes thinks that it is in Pakistan's interest to have the good relationship with that particular country. Pakistan does that. India sometimes think that now it's in India's national interest to have an interaction, have a strong bonding with Saudi Arabia right now. Let's do this. Pakistan sometimes think that okay, right now it's in our national interest to have an interaction with the Iran more than Saudi Arabia. It's not like that if any country has had an interaction or had a national, you know, a kind of interest with the other country, it doesn't mean that other are enemies. They can be enemies. They can never be enemies. You can never say that because every country's main priority is to prioritize the national interest at the top level. All the other things come later. All the other things come later. Whether it's international, it doesn't matter at all. National interest come at the top priority. And when you talk about the national interests here, then Article 57 applies. Wrongly, illegally, it shouldn't be like so. It shouldn't be like so at all, but countries have stated that. In Article 57, Security Council has to allow them to have the defensive kind of the approach. As far as Article 57 is there, so I'm not going to go into the deep analysis of Article 57, but anyhow, what my target is just to make you understand that how human rights involved in the United Nations and how human rights involved in the international relations. I'm going to give you an example here. That's actually what I have described is that it involved, and then in article, according to Article 68, International Bill of Human Rights came into being. Then after that, there were certain treaties that came into being. After that, there were certain charter-based organizations that came into being. Lot of things came into being. I'm going to give you the very basic example that how the human rights are involved in the international relations. Say, suppose we have two states, state A and state B. Both have an environmental issue. How there is an environmental issue? Both have the adjacent water, river, or you can say the ocean, that's basically touching both the states right now. This is state A and this is state B. State A, what does basically, they have their industrialized, they have made their industries, they have established a lot of things, and there is a lot of the waste that's running from this part of the water to this part of the water where the state B exists. At state B, waste has come from the state A, just because the state A was basically establishing or doing some kind of things for making their own industries powerful and all that stuff. At state B, the water definitely belongs to the state B as well, according to the international law. Both states have the right, but it doesn't mean that you can affect, badly impact, you can have the bad impact, from your doings to the other states. It can't be so. Water has arrived, waste has arrived. Here at state B, there were a lot of people who were inhabitants there. There were a lot of people who were indigenous people were there. They all had their basic right of life there. They all had their basic right of water, right of food, right of private life. They were living there. They had their bread and butter from there, from this part of the water. They had their fishing from there. Their life depended upon this part of the water. Now this waste has basically impacted the human rights of the people of the state B. Human rights are affected here. How they are affected? International law is involved here. Environmental law is involved here. Now it is not about between two people here. This is not about like two what can I say, two people who were actually having a kind of the fight with each other on different kind of things. No, states are involved in it. According to, just because of the wrongdoings of the state A, the people of the state B badly impacted, their human rights were affected. Now suppose international law is involved in it, human rights basically are affected, human rights were involved in it. If they have an agreement with each other, states, okay, state A says that, okay, I'm gonna pay you, we have done wrong to you, it's all right, we can pay you with this, and I know that we have done something wrong and we shouldn't do this, we will pay you. State B says, no, our our human rights have been badly affected, we have suffered so much. Both states fight with each other. Now the matter goes to the international court of justice. Just because the states have the dispute in the international court of the justice, the judges can say, okay, we have a kind of like we can have the maritime delimitations, we can ask the state B to give you the reparations, we can ask the state A to give you some pay for this, or to well, you can say whatever, to do whatever the state A can do because they have done wrong to you people. Now see, international environmental law, which is a part of the international law, was involved in this kind of thing. Human rights were affected because human rights were involved in it. International court of justice involved in it. There are some tribunals of the environmental law. They can also involve in this. All in all, basically they have interlinked with each other. If I talk about the law of the sea, we know that every state has some kind of the maritime delimitations. They have different zones, territorial zones, exclusive economic zones, and so on and so forth, whatever it is. Human rights are affected with these people. There are a lot of the disputes that's been happening in this world just because of this particular area of the water. International Court of Justice keeps on looking at these things. And if the crime is involved in it, if the war happens, if the atrocities are happen, if there are mass atrocities, International Criminal Court involves in it. So basically, human rights and international relations both are interlinked to each other. Definitely, that's not going to be like whatever we face at the national level. At the national level, when your rights are affected, you go to the courts, you claim, you say that, yeah, this is my right, it was affected, give me the remedy. Punish other people, give me remedy. At the national level, obviously you can say that, yeah, there are a lot of scope and there are a lot of things at the international level. Still, Pakistan, I will definitely talk about Pakistan because I belong to Pakistan. So we are still lacking in so many things as far as our protection of the human rights at the national level is concerned. Still lacking. If I talk about Bangladesh, still lacking. If I talk about all the Asian countries, we're still lacking. What's the main reason? Because there is no implementation at the national level. as far as I talk about at the international level, that how the human rights are protected at the, you can say, at international level, how these are protected. Okay, you can say, okay, madam has said, okay, we human rights are involved in the international law. For example, she has given us the example of the environmental law. The waste came here from there, and they both had the problem with each other. They had the dispute. They went to the International Court of Justice, and then in International Court of the Justice, all things came together. Now, how we can say that this is my right, this has been violated, this is my human right, this human right was violated in that particular state? Who is going to remedy me? Who is going to give me the remedy? Who is going to give me the protection and the respect of the human rights at that level? This is basically a very deep, you can say, a big question. All right. So, what happens? This is basically the beginning. This is basically the beginning, which I have discussed, that these both relate to each other. Now, we will come to the implications of the human rights in the international law. You will have a very better understanding of it. Now, at the international level, as far as the protection and the promotion of human rights are concerned, two things are there. Two things are there. One is the United Nations charter-based procedures. These are the charter-based procedures. And at this side, there are the United Nations treaty-based systems, or you can say the procedures. Now, let's come to this one first. United Nations treaty bodies, procedures, or you can say systems. United Nations treaty body systems. If any one of you would let me know what the treaty is, so let's have an interaction with each other, and then we'll move forward so I can have an understanding. Are you guys getting me or not? If anyone can tell me what the treaty is all about, please unmute yourself and just to let me know of this, please.
Treaty is the, excuse me, I'm Vikram Darji from India.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, please.
hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
So, treaty is the negotiations of the, it may be a two country or it may be a different countries as well,
Mhm.
and on the basis of any issue, on the base, this is an agreement where both the country or more than the country, they will come to a certain conclusions that we are going to implement a certain thing, and this certain thing has to be followed by all the country, irrespective of whatever the matters comes in. Means they will have to adhere with the simple point that we have made this kind of treaty, that like for example, that disarmament system, like the arms cannot be, you cannot whimsically use the arms, and also uh, the particular thing they,
Is
they,
it
they are
is
going
it
to,
necessary? Is it just necessary, or is it just sufficient to have an agreement with each other, or there is something which is very much important in the treaty? What is the main thing which is very much important in the treaty to be called the treaty at the international level?
the agreement.
Agreement. If I say that Bikram, your name is
Yeah,
Bikram. If I say that Bikram, let's have an agreement with each other. You say, okay,
yeah.
Beenish, you have to do this, and I say, okay, Bikram, let's do this.
Mm.
Is it enough?
No, it is not enough. It has to be written. It has to have the documentations. That is very important.
What else?
Whatever we are going to do it.
What else is necessary? You're missing something very important thing.
Mm.
You're missing a very
Mm.
important thing. Anyone else? What is important? What is the main thing to be called the treaty?
Ma'am, consent.
Obviously, if I'm in agreement with you, so obviously it will be with my consent. So important thing, very important.
Important thing is that
Enforceability.
agreement between states
Mutual
are treaties.
understanding.
Ma'am,
Let
legal
me
power.
tell you. Okay. All right, let me tell you. It has to be ratified. It has to be ratified. It has to be signed. It has to be,
Yeah.
it has to be signed. If I say that, Vikram, I mean, let's have an agreement with each other. Okay. It has to be signed. It
That's
has
what I
to be
said,
ratified.
madam. That
It has to be
it has to be
ratified.
documented.
It has to be ratified at the international level, or if there's some kind of the reservations in it, reservations clauses will definitely be involved in the treaty as well. Let's come to the main topic. All right. Thank you so much for your understanding of everything and for having a participation in whatever I asked. All right, just let's move to the topic again. United Nations treaty bodies. Basically, there are 9 treaty bodies. Well, there are some basically organizations. There are some jurists and the international, you can say lawyers, keep on saying that there are 10. There are 10 United Nations treaty bodies. Well, there are 9, and the 10 is the optional protocol. It's not the, you can say the treaty. Basically, that's a part of the treaty. Can anyone tell me what's the optional protocol without going to the Google? Optional protocol.
Protocol is a certain law, dogmas, certain decree.
Optional protocol.
Optional protocol means which has a flexibility is there. In certain point, they keep the flexibility.
All right, let me tell you what's the optional protocol. Optional protocol is basically if there is a parent treaty, if there is a main treaty, and in that treaty, any particular point was missing, any particular point was like, you can say that it was not that much sufficiently written or sufficiently described. So that treaty makes an optional protocol, and in that optional protocol there are certain sections which particularly discusses those things which were actually missing in the parent treaty. It's basically the extension of that parent treaty. That's what we call the optional protocol of the parent treaty. So we have 9 treaty bodies in the United Nations. It can be ICCPR, International Covenant on the Civil and the Political Rights, International Covenant on the Economic, Social, and the Cultural Right. We have some other Convention on the Rights of the Children. We have the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of the Discrimination against Women. We have the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of the Discrimination against, you can say, the discrimination and any kind of the discrimination. We have the the Convention on the Disappearances. We have the Convention on the Right of the Child. So there are basically 9 conventions. We have CAT, the basic one. CAT is UN CAT. We call it CAT, we international lawyers call it CAT. It's the Convention Against the Torture and the other cruel and inhumane, or the inhumane and the degrading treatment and all that stuff. So basically this is involved in the CAT. All these are there. Now, when we say that human rights are involved in the international law, how are they going to be protected? How they are going to be respected? I have discussed that these are the treaty bodies. Treaty bodies simply basically depicts that that's going to be a treaty between the states. There are some states who basically ratifies the treaty, who comes into an agreement with the other state, or just with the one state, or they can be more than one state, or more than 5 states, or more than 10 states. Basically, they have an agreement. All right, if it's the CAT, Convention Against Torture, if it's a CAT, one state can say, we are in an agreement, we definitely will protect people against torture. We are not going to do anything that actually depicts that we are the part of promoting or inculcating torture. We have to protect that. We are definitely not going to be a part of any kind of the cruel or inhumane degrading treatment. The treaty is basically, treaties are ratified. States are in agreement with each other. Now, in every treaty, in every treaty-based body, which I have told you there are 9, and the 10th one is the optional protocol. So let's say that we have 10. In all the 10 treaty bodies, there are certain, every has the certain, you can say, the procedure. Every treaty body has a certain procedure, how we have to conduct the rule. How does they do? For example, if we have the CAT, Convention Against the Torture, let's take one treaty, and there are, say, 10 countries who have become a part of it. What happens is that they have their 5 to 10 members. They select the members, that they can be any kind of the official government officials. They can be any voluntary persons who are very well renowned, and the states agree to that. All right. They have the treaty. Now they are answerable to this convention. They are answerable to the commission which is made by this particular convention. So what do? The states basically prepare their reports. They prepare the reports and they send the reports to the commission on whether it can be on the regular basis, or whether it can be on twice a week, or once a year, or yeah, it can be like so. They have to send the report that what's happening in your country, what's happening in our country, what we are doing. These kind of the human rights issues were very much highlighted in our country. They are responsible. They have to be responsible by keeping in mind the treaty. They are responsible to not just to the commission, but to the other states as well, because they are in a relationship, they are in an agreement with the other states as well. So you can never violate the human rights in that perspective. First, there are some kind of the state reports. Second, there are some, you can say, general comments that are made. What does the commission do? Commission basically gives the guidance to the states. Okay, commission can say that, okay, we have witnessed, according to the reports that you have given us, we have witnessed that this basically issue is very much highlighted in your report. Now we are going to give you the guidance. Let us tell you that this is basically the problem. If you pinpoint, because you have already pinpointed the problem, if you try to resolve this problem in that particular way, if you implement this, so the violation of the human rights will be reduced in your state. Basically, this is the main thing. Then there are some individual complaints as well, individual procedures as well. An individual procedure is like, for example, in one state, for example, a violation of the human right at the very major level is like violated. So an individual can claim this to the CAT. Individual can say to the Convention Against Tortures Committee that this is basically the wrong has been done to you. But before going to the international level, you have to take all the remedies at the national level first. And if your remedies are still pending, if your case is still pending at the national level, even then you can't go at the international level. So basically, you have to take the remedies. You have to take all the options, whatever you have in your country. And if you think that state is unable to provide you the protection against this particular human rights issue, against this kind of the particular violation of the human rights, then you can say you can take that particular issue to that particular treaty. If it's regarding the right of the child, you can go to the convention, you can apply the convention on the rights of the child, and you can go to the commission and go for the individual complaints. Now you would have a question in your mind that if the commission finds the complaint, then what does the commission do? Now, obviously it's a state, so state can't say, oh, hands up. States can't have the feeling of the handcuffs. What's going to happen? Basically, this happens like individual complaints are there, after taking all the measures which the person could have taken at the national level. Students, I'm talking about students. The person basically goes to the convention. By applying the convention, goes to the commission. Commission basically asks the state to take interim measures instantly so the issue can be resolved. And states can't say no. Can I ask why states can't say no? If anyone can do, let me know, please. Why states can't say no, no, we are not going to do this? Why? If a person goes to the international level
मैम वो
against
एक
the
दूसरे पे
complaint,
डिपेंड करती है, वो एक दूसरे पे डिपेंड करती है, इंटरडिपेंडेंस.
no, but that's problem is not in any other part of the world, even though they are the part of that particular treaty. One main rule of international law is missing here. Why states can't say no here? I'm talking
Because they
about
have
the treaty.
already ratified it. Once they ratified it, so it's binding on them to.
Perfect. Thank you. Very good. It's binding. There is an international rule that's called Pacta Sut Servanda. Pacta Sut Servanda means that treaties must be kept binding. Treaties must be observed. That's a rule of international law. That's one of the guiding principles of international law. When you are involved in a contract, so the rule applies. If a treaty is made, so the rule applies. So you have to be answerable. You have to respect that treaty. And the states basically respect the treaties. So if the commission says that this is basically the problem, we have got the problem, we have got the individual complaint, and the person even couldn't take the measures from at the national level, which she or he could have taken. Even then, you are basically failing in promoting and protecting and respecting the human rights. Why is it so? If it's so, these are the interim measures you have to take instantly, and the states take that. There are a lot of examples, hellish examples. So for this, you have to basically go into the deep analysis of each and everything, do research, write and read journals and articles, keep on listening to the international jurists, international legal analysts, international lawyers, and all the people, so you will have a very broad understanding of it. Anyways, this is basically the treaty based, United Nations treaty based system. I told you about another human rights protection and promotion system. That's the United Nations charter based procedures. That's very interesting. United Nations charter based system. This is not a treaty, but even then it applies to everybody. How? Can anyone let me know? How? This is not a treaty, but states have to respect that. How? United Nations charter based treaty.
Because it has become a part of international practice, international customary law.
One can be a part of it, but no, main thing.
Maybe I guess ke, more countries has accepted those and it become a universal declaration. और ज्यादा more than desired number of states जब किसी चीज को accept करती है तो वो उसकी universality हो जाती है. तो इस वजह से अगर कुछ states accept नहीं भी करती है तो it doesn't matter because जो power में states हैं वो सारी इन rules को accept करती है.
To some point it can be right, but yeah, this is right that these are the customary international law. This is a part of customary international law. It's the part of Skogan's preemptory norms and all that stuff. I will come to that point later, but what is the main thing? United Nations charter based system. The word itself describes not a treaty, but even then it is followed.
Maybe we are a part of a United Nations community,
Definitely,
so that's why we have to follow it.
Very right. It's a United Nations charter based treaty. It's a charter. States are the members of it. There is an international scrutiny at the time. There is no treaty. Even then, they are answerable to the United Nations. Here comes General Assembly. Here comes the Security Council. Here comes some, you can say, United Nations Commission on the Human Rights, which basically has been replaced with the Human Rights Council. I'll come to this. So basically, we are a part of it. We are answerable. Haven't you noticed one thing that in any part of the world, a thing happened, and in other part of the world, we just turn on our TV and we say, okay, our discussion has been just running in another part of the country. Why is it so? Because we are a part of the United Nations. We are the member states. We have an international scrutiny. We have to go to the Transparency International. We have to be like, the Security Council keeps on looking at us for everything. Sorry for the distraction, because so what happens is that at this level, there are two things. The one is the United Nations Human Right. The first stage was basically the United Nations Commission on the Human Rights. Just give me 1 second, please. Sorry for that. All right. So at the United Nations charter-based system, it was one thing at the very start in the 1960s. What happened? United Nations Commission on the Human Rights came into being. At that time, in Colombia, in Congo, in Haiti, in Eastern Europe, in some part of America, in different, you can say, in Soviet Union states, a lot of things were happening in that. Just whenever I talk about something, so just look at the timing, 1960. It will be very easy for all of you to understand the basic history of everything when you just look at the dates, because dates matter a lot. I'm talking about 1960. In 1960, the international law was not that much, you can say, was very much established. In 1960, they were not that much, a lot of the development of not of the international law, but of the human rights as well. So it was just not like that. Even then, even at that time, the working group came into being. It was called the working group by the United Nations Commission on the Human Rights. The working group on the involuntary and the enforced disappearances came into being. And the purpose of this working group was that, yes, Aziz, do you want to discuss something?
मैडम व्हाट डज इस्लाम से अबाउट ह्यूमन राइट्स और रसूलुल्लाह सल्लम जब से दुनिया में आई थी ना तो उस वक्त बहुत तारीखी था तो उस वक्त आप सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने इंसानी हुकूक के बारे में बताया था क्या आप बताएंगे मुझे इसके बारे में
We will come to this later. Our topic right now is international law. So it basically, obviously, according to our religion, and in fact, according to everyone's religion, I'm not going to talk about Islam here. According to everyone's religion, the basic principles are still the same. We have to respect the humanity. Humanity is the biggest religion. All right, so we will come to the international law. Definitely, that's the part of our discussion. And if we get the time, so we will come to your point as well. And you know the answer, that this answer is like, we can't deny this. And this is the very well-established thing. And I think what we are is just because of our religions and all that stuff. So I'm not going to go into that detail as well. Let's go to the topic of the United Nations. So in the United Nations, basically, working group of involuntary and the enforced disappearances came into being. The basic purpose of this working group was that they have to look at the situation and the violation of the human rights in that particular country, whether it could be that particular country or whether it could be that particular situation in all the part of the world. Two things were there. Or you can just look at the one country, or you could have just looked at just, you can say, the one issue in different part of the world. For example, let's just give an example. For example, we are talking about the torture here. Let's say the torture. After the prohibition of the genocide, torture issue rose like hell. Everybody was just like talking about the torture, because right now we say that genocide doesn't exist. It exists, but in the form of the torture. In Saudi Arabia, let's take another example. In Saudi Arabia, death penalty is there. Obviously, that's a part of the Sharia law in that particular country. International community says that you basically give the death penalty, and according to the international principle, jus cogens, there is a principle called jus cogens, which we also call the preemptory norm. Preemptory norm are basically the recognized international international laws principles from which no derogation is permitted. You have to accept that, and you have to follow that, come what may, whether you like it or not. You have to follow this, and torture is one of that. Piracy, war, genocide, slavery, torture. International community says that death penalty becomes basically is included in a circle of the torture. International law says that. Still, there are Transparency International involved in it. Then there are certain other organizations that keep on looking and doing the international scrutiny and all that stuff on that particular country. So you can't say that if we have one thing, so we can't deny this or deny that particular thing. But in spite of all that, as I just mentioned earlier, your national interest comes first, and that's a part of the national interest. If the country has the hybrid laws, if the countries have the hybrid system of the laws, then the things would be quite different. They have to follow that. But if the country just applies the Sharia law, and in Sharia law, and that country doesn't ask anybody or any other state, okay, help us, then definitely they're going to go for the Sharia law rather than any other thing. All right, so I'm not gonna go into the deep analysis of the political debates. I can give you the examples of the IMF here, but that's definitely, our time is quite short, so we have to be like very much into this time, and we have to try our level best to complete each and everything in this time. So the working group of involuntary and the forced disappearances at that time basically looked at each and everything, and they made their reports. They made the reports and they gave the reports to the United Nations General Assembly. And obviously, we all know the General Assembly's resolutions doesn't have the legal binding effect until and unless it is ratified by the Security Council. When the resolution is given by the Security Council, it becomes legally binding. And there are a lot of resolutions which have become legally binding upon the states because the Security Council has permitted it, and Security Council has made the resolution. Security Council was the one who established that. Security Council was the one who instituted that at that time. So what happens is that, so this basically was the first thing. The voluntary groups were influential at that time in 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, still in 1980s. They were quite very much influential, but even then some things were missing. United Nations Commission on the Human Rights were converted into the United Nations Human Rights Council. Council was established. And the main thing the council did was it basically differentiated two things. One was the thematic mandates, which you will definitely come to know when I will discuss about this, thematic mandates. And the second thing was countryside visits. It's very important. United Nations Human Rights Council basically had the thematic mandates, and at the other hand, it had the countryside visits. What happened? In the thematic mandates, the special reporters work. These special reporters are not basically instituted by any government or any state. These are voluntary people. Even they don't get the money for this sometimes. Let me give you an example. My professor, whom I studied human rights, in particular in relation to the international law, his name is Ahmed Shahid. He is the United Nations special reporter on the issues of Iran. He was barred by Iran because Iran was thinking that he's the spy of America. Why he's coming to us? And basically, Iran doesn't know at that time that he is not instituted by America. These are basically, they do the work voluntarily. They do the work just to be, they are the human rights defender. They want to know that what's happening in this particular part of the world. They joined the United Nations at that time, and they are called the special reporters. There are so many special reporters in the system of the United Nations, and they are working so much and so well that just because of all those special reporters, whatever we can witness in Amnesty International, in the BBC News, or in CNN, in Pakistani news, in Indian channels, just because of these special reporters. They basically have a watchdog on all the human rights, and what we can say, all the things which we face as a violation of the human rights and all that stuff. All right. So thematic mandates, what do the special reporters do? They sit at one place, but they make reports, just like which we just studied in the treaty based, that states make the reports. In that, states basically provide the reports. In this, basically, the special reporters keep on looking at what's happening in this particular part of the country. They can look at the violations of the human rights. They can look at the discrimination against the women in Afghanistan. They can say that this basically particular issue has been happening in Cambodia. They can say that this is happening in this particular part of the world and all that stuff. They make the report. They provide the report to the United Nations. United Nations have a look at it. And then it got the international attention. When international pressure is there, so then states don't think about their national interest. Then states think about that what actually the pressure we have. Oh, we are violating the human rights norms. We are violating the norms of international law. We are violating something which we shouldn't do, or we're still doing, and we should avoid that. International pressure, media, non-state actors, transnational organizations keep on looking at this, and then they divert, and then they basically change their you can say way of running their governments, their politics, their lives, their each and everything is basically changed. I will definitely give you, I think, 1 or 2 examples which are coming into my mind. I'll give you that, but after I complete my discussion, that this one is thematic mandate. Now this comes to the countryside visit. Most of the time what happens is that special reporters go to different states. They have the interaction, but with the consent of the state. With the consent of the state, until and unless they don't have the serious violation of the human rights. Then the Security Council asks the special reporters to go to that particular country, have a visit. Let's take an example. For example, where the consent is there, India and Pakistan. In this particular, let me just give you an example. On the issue of Kashmir in 1940s, in 1950s, 1960s, United Nations was willing to send some kind of the reporter there to have a say and know of the plebiscite in Kashmir. Sometime Pakistan rejected. Pakistanis they said no, we don't allow. Sometimes India did, sometimes we did. We both never wanted. Simple as that. I have just given you an example that this is like that we are not giving the consent to do that. We are not. Special reporters are there to have a look at the situation of that particular state or that particular area. We don't want it. We don't let the special reporters come to that place until and unless Security Council thinks that the situation is worse than there. Until and unless. If the Security Council thinks the situation is extremely worse there, Security Council can ask the special reporter to go to that particular country and have a look at the situation, that what's happening in for example, Gaza, Palestine, in Syria, in Cambodia, in any part of the world. So as far as Kashmir is concerned, I never wanted to highlight this basically issue, but I have just given you an example that this is basically happens in, as far as special reporters are concerned. I have just given you an example. As far as the countryside visits are concerned, so they have an interaction. Sometimes they have an interaction with the victims of the families. Victims, whatever we had, according just because of the violation of the human rights, relatives of the victims. special reporters have an interaction with those. Sometimes they have an interaction with media. Sometimes they have an interaction with the human rights defenders at the national level. Sometimes they have a face-to-face interaction with the president. Sometimes they have the face-to-face interaction with the prime minister. Sometimes they have the face-to-face interaction with the Ministry of the Justice in any particular country. Sometimes they go to that particular areas and they have a look at it, that what actually it's happening, the violation of the human rights. So they can be the mass atrocities, or they can be like, you can say less violation of the human rights, but the violation is still the violation. So these are basically done by the mandates, and the special reporters are also called the mandate holders. Keep in mind one more thing, these are called the mandate holders. I have an example in my mind. In basically Spain in 2003, let me give you an example. The special reporter on the extrajudicial summary and the arbitrary execution, the special reporter who was deployed just for this particular thing. In 2003, he went to Spain and he gave many recommendations. And the government gave a response, and the government gave 80 pages responses. And in those 80 pages, all the recommendations which were given by the mandate holders, or you can say the special reporter at that time, was rejected by the government. Mandate holder or the special reporter highlighted or pinpointed issues in Spain in 2003 or 4, I think in 2003. They highlighted it, but government rejected that. Government said, no, we don't have any kind of the problem. We just ask our human rights defender, ask our national organizations, ask our, the people. We are so happy. All the recommendations which were given by the United Nations special reporter or the mandate holders, that this is something you can do to protect and promote and respect the human rights, all were rejected except of one. One recommendation which the government adopted at that time was that special reporter said you should install CCTV cameras in your interrogation rooms to reduce the torture and the violation of the human rights, to reduce the atrocities rate. Government accepted that. And after recommendation, when sometimes these special reporters give the recommendations, after recommendation, they basically go for follow-up. This is called the follow-up. They ask the government that, have you paid attention to us? Have you said that? Have you just thought of it, whatever we just gave you, some kind of the recommendation and all that stuff? Did you think about it? If the government thinks, if the government sees, yeah, that's actually going to go in our favor, we can have the beneficial, you can say the impact, that can be the very beneficial impact upon our society, not just on our society, but on the well-being of the people by having and promoting and respecting the human rights. Governments accept that, and they accepted. Thousands of after the special reporter just told all the recommendation in 2003 at that time, government accepted, and thousands of the cases of the torture were reduced just because of this. There's another case of in 2009 in Colombia, Swasha killing was happened. If anyone knows about the Swasha killing of all right, Dr. A.R.A. Fazil, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. You may leave. So Swasha killing in Colombia, basically, it's a very, you can say, highlighted issue as far as human rights are concerned. In Colombia, it happened. What happened that in that the armed forces, the military personnel basically took all the unarmed civilians and they present those unarmed civilians as the guerrilla fighters, because military personnel's commanders were saying that if you give us the guerrilla commanders, I'm going to benefit you. We are supposed to give you privileges and immunities. Government was unaware of that. In 2008, this basically highlighted. In 2009, the special reporter went to Cambodia, and special reporter said that basically this is happening. The unarmed civilian people were murdered. They were detained just because they were presented as the guerrilla fighter, though they were not the guerrilla fighters at that time. So 3 commanders and 2 generals basically were they resigned just because the special reporter had a face-to-face interaction with the president at that time, and they said that I have basically met all the victims' relatives, and they have told me the stories. Just ask your human rights defenders. Just look at the reports given to you by your national level organizations. All are saying that this is happening. Well, basically, this is all just about the, you can say, the role of the mandate holders or the special reporter that can be very beneficial. They are truly very beneficial, but sometimes being a student of repeat the point that government was sorry if who is asking the question? You may ask the question by unmuting yourself, please.
So, ma'am, some we'll give the participants time to have a
I
question.
am giving, but just give me just 2 minutes to conclude because
Okay, yeah. So,
yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is that human rights basically have a very great and influential role in the international relations and international laws in human rights, in the promotion and the protection of the human rights. But there are some students, obviously a lot of students keep on asking this question that why still it is still happening. So we say that it is better to have something than to have nothing. So these are basically the concept of the, not the whole concept, but I tried my best to give you at least some of the points so that you can have a idea that what actually it is all about. So we have some time, so if anyone has any question regarding the lecture, you may ask me. Anyone?
thank you, ma'am. So, participants, the stage is open for the question answer session.
Yeah, please.
If you wanted to ask the question, please raise your hand. We will start one by one. So please raise your hand, whoever wants to ask the question from ma'am. Because, yeah. Ajaz Khan, you wanted to ask any question from ma'am?
Anyone, if anyone want to discuss something, you may.
Yes.
No more question, or you guys haven't understood anything? They can be just 2 things.
No, because I know, ma'am, I think they have understood and they also have raised their hand. So yeah, they started raising hand.
Yeah.
So first, I request Mujib Azam. Please ask your question and unmute yourself.
Assalamualaikum, ma'am.
Walaikum salam.
Assalamualaikum, ma'am. Myself Mubin Azam. Ma'am, my question is that अभी recently जो genocide war हो रही है फिलिस्तीन में, तो क्या वहाँ पे ह्यूमन राइट्स प्रोटेक्ट हो रहे हैं लोगों के? क्योंकि आपने जैसे यूनाइटेड नेशन की बात की, यूनाइटेड नेशन ह्यूमन राइट प्रोटेक्ट करता है, लेकिन मैम देखा जाए तो कहीं पे भी प्रोटेक्ट नहीं हो रही। क्योंकि आपने फिलिस्तीन में देखा, गाजा में देखा, हमास में देखा, और यूनाइटेड नेशन भी पावर्स के आगे तो नहीं चल पा रही। कि मैम अभी रिसेंटली मैंने भी इंटरनेशनल ह्यूमन राइट्स पढ़ा, इंटरनेशनल लॉ पढ़ा है, अभी मेरे पेपर हुए हैं, तो मैंने भी जहाँ तक पढ़ा कि जिसके पास पावर होती है लाइक उसी की ज़्यादा चलती है। और अगर यूनाइटेड नेशन में देखा जाए तो ज़्यादा यूके या तो इसराइल। तो आप इस पे थोड़ा सा ब्रीफिंग दें मुझे।
Let me. Someone raised the hand when I wanted to discuss a very main point that being a student of law, being a student of international law, being a student of human rights, you can say being a defender or the promoter of the human rights, we feel ashamed because we say things are not going this way. Let me give you an example of one thing. If you have studied international law, read one more thing, the realist theory of international relations. Realism. Realism. If you read that, you will have an answer of your question. In realism, basically, it is said that states are the main actors, and the one who is more powerful has the more power to do things. And I think it's not about just America, it's not just about UK, it's in every part of the world. Cold War was not just because of the war between, like, it was not a armed war, it was economical war and ideological war. But that was very worse, that it broke Soviet Union, and Soviet Union was converted into the Russia and many other parts of the Russia, though it was not armed, it was just the ideological war. Even then, it had a very, very, very strong impact upon that. As far as the Palestine issue is concerned, it is one of those mass atrocities that could have ever happened in this whole world. And I ended my lecture with the saying that obviously we are lacking in a lot of things, but it is always better to have something than to have nothing. And as far as the Palestine is concerned, so there are a lot of actors which are involved in it, and it's not just that it has just started. It is definitely, it actually started, with the before the independence of Pakistan and India. And it's a war between, not the war, it's not a war of the land, it's a war of ideologies, it's a war of religion, it's a war of what's going to happen after 100 years. It's a war between, you can say, just one power. It claimed that they are the power one, they are the strong one, but they are not. America says, okay, just give me let me just give you the name of this. America is a superpower. No, America is not. Who says America is a superpower right now? It is not. But sometimes what happens is that there are certain things which are involved, certain non-state actors are involved in it. And as far as Israel is concerned, obviously you know about what happened, Holocaust, and Jews and genocide and the torture. Many are silent on it. Many Islamic states are silent on it. We are so much ashamed of it. And I think this is the war that's not going to end. But my perception is this, because that's not something which it is just started. It started so many times ago. But as far as human rights defenders are concerned, so yeah, they are lacking in, like, in lot of things. I mean, lot of things. If you read the realism theory, by separating it from the liberalism theory of the international relations, you will have a better understanding of it. And the world is just like that. World is still the same. If you think that, oh, we are progressing, no, we are progressing in, like, okay, when one time we had the Suzuki car, now we have upgraded ourselves to the Parado, and we have up. No. World is not changing. World is still the same. The state powers are still the same. It's a circle. It's a civilization, and so literally, I mean, in this scenario, I think it's a religion. It's a war of ideologies. It's a war of religion, and yeah, and many state actors are involved in it, and human rights defenders are quietly failed in it. There's no doubt in it. Very failed. Anyone else?
Thank you, ma'am. So I believe you have wonderfully given the answer of this question. And now I request Ahmed Bilal to ask your question.
Yeah, please.
Ahmed Bilal, please unmute yourself.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum everyone. I would like to say two questions. First, the mechanism as a common people, how common people can achieve his human rights. And the other one is how the civil society play a role in advancing and promoting protection for human rights.
Your first question, sorry, first
Please
question,
answer.
repeat it again, please. Your
If
first
if human if violated by violated, then how common people can achieve the mechanism as a Pakistani citizen? What is the mechanism to attain the protection of his human rights?
Yeah. First of all, I basically described each and everything in my presentation, and I discussed that first of all, you have to go to have to take all the remedies at the national level. At the national level. And at the national level, if the state is against you, if state is against you, then you have to go to the international level. We unfortunately, we haven't signed some treaties, we have not signed some treaties, but there are certain issues that raise the massive attention um, of the international community. There are some the problems which happened in Pakistan regarding blasphemy laws, or we can have the issue of the Afia Siddiqui. You have that in front of you. You have the idea. You can have an idea of the Afia Siddiqui. This basically problem could have dealt in Pakistan, but it didn't. It was not dealt in Pakistan because Pakistan political parties, leaders, and some states and the non-state actors, and which you discussed about the civil society. Some civil society members were also involved in this, that it got the international attention. When it got the international attention, now this issue is basically raised at every part of the world, at every level, whether you go to the General Assembly, whether you go to the Security Council, the resolutions have been made. It got an international attention at some point when the issue is that much of heinous, you can say, of such importance or of much importance. But first of all, you have to take all the remedies at your national level. You can't go to the international level without taking the remedies at the national level. If your human rights are protected at the national level and the state is protecting, if the constitution is there that the state will protect all the human rights, then you don't need to go to the international level until and unless your issue gets the attention of the international community. And if the issue basically gets the attention of the international community, say, even then the international community will ask the states to do this and not to do this, to have the positive obligation and to have the negative obligation. Your second question was that regarding the civil society plays a very, very, very important role in the promotion and protection of human rights. Let's give an example of the NGOs have a very, you can say, the strong and the positive side as well as the negative side. You can have an example of the media in front of you. In Pakistan, if I just give you an example of the Pakistan, what media is doing right now? Nothing. Media is doing a lot of things, but at the same time, media is not promoting and protecting human rights. How many good pieces of news that you can hear or you can watch on the TV, except of, oh, rigging has been happened, oh, Khan has done this, oh, Nawaz Sharif has done this. What else is there? Media has that much scope that within 10 to 15 minutes, media has made the perception that this party is leading. How can you say that? And the media has that much strong perception, that much strong, you can say, it's very much influential, it's very much stronger that uh, you can't deny this. You can never ever deny this. So civil society, people themselves have the very much vital role. There are a lot of the people in Iran. Haven't you witnessed the revolution which was just by the people, because the civil society was that much stronger, and Shah of Iran had to run to America by leaving Iran because the people revolted against him. So civil society has a lot of things if the people want to. So you have to change yourself as well to know your rights and stand for your rights. That's how you get you protect and promote and respect your human rights. Know your rights, stand for it.
Thank you, ma'am. So we will take last question from Ajaz Ali Khan. So Ajaz, kindly unmute yourself and ask your question.
My question is that
You're audible.
My question is that what are the dualist and monist states?
Sorry.
My question is that what are the dualist and monist states?
Oh, basically, that's a basically part of the, you can say, it's international law, and sometimes the states basically look at the national level. They follow the national laws, at the same time they follow the international laws as well, and they inculcate some kind of the international laws principle into the national laws. Sometimes there are countries who just keep on sticking at their own national laws without even recognizing the international law. They recognize international law, but at some point they think that they recognize some, you can say, just few international law, as I just mentioned, regarding the preemptory norms, from which no derogation is, you can say, permitted, as far as the war and just cogents are there. You have to follow that, you have to accept that. So some states are monolith, some are dualist. But now your question is, if you say that in today's world there are some countries who follow the dualism or who follow the monolism, it's not like that. Not like that. That's an old concept of international law before 1960s. Now, if you talk about the monolist or dualist concept of the laws and of the countries and of the states, that's not actually not the case. Every country keeps on thinking about the multinational organizations, international organizations, because they are so much interlinked to each other. So that's basically not the case in the today's world. It's all just about that, who follows the national laws. Obviously every country follows the national laws, but at the same time they follows the some rules of the international laws, and some don't. So those who don't, they follow the monolist, and those who do, they follow the dualistic point of views. But that's the very old concept. That's not valid in today's part of the world, in today's international laws concept.
Okay, so I believe all the question has been answered. So now we would like to conclude the session here, and I request Daniel Soccer so to kindly give a vote of thanks to our speaker. Please, Daniel, it is over to you.
I am personally, as well as on behalf of Wakalat Online and Legal Research and Analysis, want to say thanks, a big thanks to our chief guest, Ms. Beenish Awan, advocate, who gave us a really interesting talk about human rights in today's session. Madam, we really appreciate you taking the time to teach us about such important aspect of human rights and the overview of international law relating to human rights. Your knowledge and passion relating to the subject have helped us a lot in learning today. Thank you for being part of our learning experience.